Hi all, this is Yossi Tuna, and this is basically my attempt to do a quick and dirty guide for the very basics of modding the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. Specifically, not making mods, but just using mods. Recently, there was an update. I'm doing this in March 2025. Recently, there was an update that broke quite a few mods, and also resulted in some changes to some of the modding frameworks, like Magicite. And as a result, some of the guides out there that currently exist, while they're still really helpful, no longer 100% reflect what you need to be doing to get mods working. And so I'm putting this video together just to maybe help folks figure out, have a kind of one-stop shop for the basics on how to set up Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster to use mods with, and then to what are the things you need to do to get those mods to work. So, first off, what you will want is a clean install of whatever your chosen Pixel Remaster is. The one I'll be using as the example here is Final Fantasy VI. I installed it through Steam, so what I'm going to talk about now is going to involve Steam, but if you install it through some other method, I believe there are some others, then the directories may be slightly different. But in general, everything should work the same. It's just your copy of Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster may be located in a slightly different place on your computer. So, that is once you have your game installed, then your best resource for the basics is going to be to go to one of the Steam guides for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster modding. Fugsnarf on the Moogles and Mods Discord has put together a really kind of good, fairly comprehensive guide to modding each of the Pixel Remasters, including some universal mods that are the same for every Pixel Remaster, and then some that are individual to each particular game. So again, we're looking at Final Fantasy VI for our example, so we'll want to be looking at our Final Fantasy VI Steam guide. And I'll be putting, not links, because for some reason YouTube isn't letting me do external links in descriptions. I think I'm not verified enough for it. But I will put like the addresses of each of those guides in the description. In addition, if you're on the Moogles and Mods Discord, which I'll also put in the description, from there are also pretty readily available links in the mod guide section to each of those modding guides. So, each of these guides is pretty much the same kind of format. It starts off with kind of the basic things you would do. Still very helpful. There have been a couple of changes since this was most recently updated, and then it has a general selection of different kinds of mods. Universal mods and font mods, which can be applied to every Pixel Remaster pretty much, and then game-specific mods like soundtrack, gameplay, UI, battle scenes, sprite mods, those sorts of things. So, the things you will need to keep in mind when you're getting started modding with the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster games is that there are a couple of different kinds of mods. There are bundle mods, which are bundle files, like that's the file extension. And those are essentially kind of bundles of in-game files. And this is how the Pixel Remaster stores the files that it uses. So the benefit of bundle modding, which essentially involves you replacing the vanilla game bundles with modded bundles. The benefit is that it requires you to do very little to, as far as kind of setup. All you really have to do is change one file most of the time. The downside with bundle modding is that you are in fact replacing those vanilla bundles with the modded bundles. And so you are making permanent changes to your installation of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster that you're modding. This is not like a huge deal. If you're using Steam, you can very easily choose to verify your game files to return your installation to basically vanilla. If you've acquired it through some other method, you can always re-download it and reinstall it. But it does mean that if you end up messing something up, you may end up having to kind of go back to scratch because it is making those permanent changes. So that's method 1, which is bundle modding. Method 2 is going to be using a mod framework. And the 2 mod frameworks generally that are used for the Pixel Remasters are Memoria and Magicite. I'm not going to talk about Memoria today because as far as I'm aware, it has not yet been updated for the most recent update for the game, so it is currently not working with the most recent version. Magicite is what I will be talking about today. It also tends to be although I have used both Memoria and Magicite to create mods, most of the mods that I make now tend to be for Magicite. Memoria and Magicite each have sort of benefits and drawbacks, and there are certain things that, one might be better at than the other. So today we'll talk about what are the things you need to do to get any mod to work, what are the things you need to do to specifically set up Magicite, and then how do we install bundle mods, and how do we install Magicite mods. So the best place to start is going to be with that Steam guide. As it mentions, you will need some way to extract the files you download. So that's going to be some form of unzipping software. Most of what you'll be working with are zip files, but there may also be some 7-zip files, .7z. And in that case, you will probably need 7-zip the program. But for regular zip files, you can use a program like 7-zip, but you can also just use, I think, Windows if you're using Windows. The next big thing you will need is the custom unityplayer.dll. So if you look here, let me go to the main directory for your Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. This is a directory you want to familiarize yourself with because it is what you will be kind of extracting files into. So this is where your Final Fantasy 6.exe file is, so your program file. It will, by default, I think if you install it in Steam, be under your main Steam directory, then under Steam Apps, Common, and Final Fantasy 6 PR, or whatever Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster you're modifying. By default, it'll have Final Fantasy 6 data, Final Fantasy 6.exe, and then GameAssembly.dll and UnityPlayer.dll, I believe. I believe those are the 2 that it comes with by default. It may also have an extras folder if you got the special version that came with the soundtrack and wallpapers and such. So, what we're going to do for this is we're going to start off by copying the address of that folder. And in Windows, you can easily just kind of highlight that top category, hit Control-C to copy it, or right-click and copy, because this is the directory we're going to want to be extracting things into. So now the question becomes, what do we need to be extracting? So there are 3 things you're going to want, and all of them you can find where to get them, or 2 of them, the 3 things, you can find where to get them on that Steam guide. The first of those is the custom unityplayer.dll. So as I mentioned, there is a file called unityplayer.dll that is installed by default. That one, unfortunately, the vanilla one, does not work with mods. If you want mods to work, and this is true for most mods, and certainly any kind of bundle mod, you are going to need a custom version of that. Fortunately, the Steam Guide links to a Nexus Mods page, which has a Unity Player DLL, a custom version, that bypasses what are called CREC checks that essentially make sure that it is, in fact, an unmodified file. It basically removes that so that modified files can load. It links to the one on the Final Fantasy 1 Pixel Remaster Nexus, but all of them are the same. I think each of the Pixel Remaster Nexus modding sites has a version of this, but it's the same file, just 6 different times. So no matter which link you follow, it'll work. So we will start off by downloading that unityplayer.dll file. So we'll go to manual download and then slow download. You can do fast download if you're like a premium member. I am not currently. So that is file 1. And we can go to downloads and we open that up. As we can see, it has unityplayer.dll there. We'll hit extract and we will put that address of our main Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster directory. When you extract it into the right place, a pop-up should pop up saying, would you like to replace the existing file? If it doesn't, then something has probably gone wrong. If it does, you want to say yes, because there are no downsides to replacing it. Like, if you decide you want to remove all your mods and play a vanilla install, the modded Unity Player DLL will still load just fine if you're not using mods. So we can now close that out, and that is one of our 3 things we have required. At this point, we are set up to use bundle mods. If we want to use a kind of bundle mod, we can currently install it as is. The unityplayer.dll is really all we need. But if we want to do some of the more complicated mods, one of the ones that do use those modding frameworks, we are going to need to install something else. And in this case, that's going to be Magicite. So let's go to the installing Magicite section. So this is the one thing that is really not working so well on the Steam guide at this point, it has not been updated, I believe, is the BepinEx version that this is taking us to. Is not the version that the most recent update of Magicite that works with the most recent update of Pixel Remasters needs. So it says to download here to this file. You're actually not going to want to do that. That is not the version we need. And this may be updated at some point after this video, but if you follow these instructions and it's not working, it is probably because it's the wrong version of BepinEx. BepinEx is a kind of software that allows you to, I think, I'm not a programmer, but essentially it's software that allows you to create these modding frameworks for Unity-based games that are made using the Unity game engine, basically. And in this case, Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, the entire series, is done using Unity. And so as a result, BepinEx is needed to be able to get Magicite to work. So the way you'll get Magicite is that you will click on Find the Latest Version, and that takes you to the main Magicite webpage. It tells you that it is updated for the most recent version for BepinEx 6.0.0 Pre-2. Previous versions of Magicite worked with a different version of BepinEx, the one that is linked on that page, but the newest version does use a different version of that base software. As far as how you find that, it says it's 6.0.0 Pre-2. Your best bet for that is probably to just Google BepinEx, and then click GitHub, and it will give you a bunch of different releases. If you are not used to how GitHub works, you can pretty easily just search for that specific kind of version in Google. But if you do want to see it, I believe you go to releases. Here we go. And this gives you all of the different releases. The most recent version, actually, it looks like, is BepinEx 6.0.0 Pre-2. So at this point, when I'm making this video, if you download the most recent version, it will be this. To download it, we go down to Assets, and it gives us a bunch of its different zip files. So there are 3 different kind of versions of it. The Net Core CLR version, the Unity IL2CPP version, and the Unity Mono version. And each of those has multiple versions for different operating systems. So what we're going to want for this is the Unity IL2CPP version. Specifically, we're going to want to be working with Windows, since I'm using Windows, and we're going to want the WinX64. I think that is what you'll need for modern Windows operating systems, from what I'm aware. I think x86 is for older ones, but anything that's that old may or may not actually be running Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. So what you want to click on is BepinEx Unity IL2 CPP Win x64 6.0.0 pre2.zip. So you'll click on that, and then it will download. Then we can go back to our Magicite page, and then we will download Magicite 220 zip. So those are the 3 files we need to get our modding framework set up. So let's go to Documents. So now we have BepinEx. So we'll click on that zip file, and we will extract that into, again, our main Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster folder. So we'll select that. And now we'll close that out. If we look at our main, whoops, go back to the Final Fantasy. There we go. As you see our Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster main directory, we now have a couple more folders. We have BepinEx and we have .NET. There's also a few other files like changelog and doorstop config. So what this means is that we now have BepinEx set up, or the basics of it set up. If you click on BepinEx, you can see that there is a plugins directory that will have any BepinEx plugins you have or you choose to install. There is going to be more that we're going to need, but we are going to need a BepinEx plugin in there to start that stuff up. So to do that, we'll go to our final file, our Magicite file. Come on. Open. There we go. And we will extract that. Again, we will just put in our main directory because it will automatically, it has everything automatically nested into the directory it needs to be in. So in this case, it'll automatically put it in that BepinEx directory. So we'll extract that one. And now if we go back to here, if we go to BepinEx and we go into plugins, there's now magicite.bundle, magicite.dll, and soldier.dll. So those are the files that we need in there to make sure that Magicite works. So we now have all of the things we need in place to get our modding framework set up. The next thing we will need to do is run Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster once. So you'll go to Steam, presumably, or wherever you're going, and set it to run. A console window will pop up, as we saw here. That'll show that it is like doing some stuff. BepinEx is doing some like various management to set up that framework. It takes a little while this first time. Future times it'll be much faster. And in future, although it does, I think by default, open this console every time you play, you can set in BepinEx config, which we'll talk about in a second, to have it not do that and just take you directly into the game. So it'll take, 20 seconds or something. There we go. And then our game is now loaded. And we can see that it is working just fine. So yes, our install is working fine with all of that stuff. So we'll close it out. And then if we take a look in our BepinEx directory, we've now got a bunch of new stuff. This is the stuff that was setting up during that kind of short delay. So setting up a bunch of stuff, but one of the things that it is setting up here is config. So we now have a BepinEx config file. We can go into that and edit it to basically make it so it does not show that console every time, which can be really handy if you're using something like, if you're doing on something like the Steam Deck and you don't want shifting between windows, messing up the way that your software works. And then there is also a Magicite config file. So if we open that, we can see that it allows us to export files. If you want to see how to use this, you can check my my sort of intro to Magicite modding video that is, I think, it goes over the basics of that. And then there are two other options, which are the import directory, so where is it going to take its mod files from, and the export directory. So when you do that export, where does it put those files? By default, they're going to go in your streaming assets directory, and under that, Magicite or Magicite export directory. So that is kind of the basics of how that works. Again, it's probably fine to just leave it by default with its, Magicite and Magicite export. So if we click on Final Fantasy 6 data, that then takes us to streaming assets. If we click on that, we can see that this is the file the area where Magicite would be. Some Magicite mods will create a Magicite directory for you, but a lot of them may not. They'll tell you to put it in a Magicite directory. Magicite does not by default create that directory, so you may need to just create a directory yourself and call it Magicite. It's pretty easy to do. Come on, quick, there we go. Talking about bundle mods, you can start to see some of these bundles here. These are the bundles for fonts. So font _de.bundle is technically, I think, the font that's supposed to be used for German. Font _en is for English, so on. JA is Japanese, TH is Thai, etc. There are also a bunch of other bundles. If you go to AA, standalone Windows 64, and there's a crap ton of bundles. Basically, this is where the vast majority of your game files are. So bundle modding is going to require replacing files in one of those two locations. Either the font bundles in that streaming assets, or every other bundle in streaming assets, AA, standalone Windows 64. So, that is the locations we'll need for those. For Magicite mods, we'll be putting those in our newly created Magicite directory here. So, now we have our framework in place. Let's go get some mods to put in. The best place to look for this is going to be the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster Nexus on Nexus Mods. It is a site that essentially has a ton of different mods for each of the Pixel Remasters. So I'm currently on the Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster one. So there are 106 different mods here. Obviously, some of these are going to be contradictory. You won't want to use all of them. Some may do things you don't want. Some may be out of date. But you'll have some options for whatever it is that you decide you want to do. So I'd like us to kind of get started by installing at least one of each kind of mod. So one font mod, one other bundle mod, and then one Magicite mod. So probably a good place to start is by just going to mods and looking at the new mods. Okay, that's actually not giving us anything. Why is it not giving us? Oh, it's only stuff in the last. How about we just go to latest? Maybe that's it. Or let's just do all mods and then we can do by date last updated. Okay, there we go. So, as you can see, we do also have that Unity Player DLL. Each of the ones has its own file. So you can get it here at Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster Nexus if the Steam Guide link doesn't work for some reason. So obviously there are a ton of mods that have not necessarily been updated for the most recent update. This will not be a problem for Magicite mods generally, because they're not directly replacing the game files. Magicite was essentially fitting them and putting them into where they need to go at runtime. So what that means is that Magicite mods tend to make it through updates just fine. Bundle mods tend not to, because they have all the game files packaged. And if those game files change in any way, like if some of the names change or some of the other things about them change, then that is likely to stop working, unfortunately. That said, a lot of bundle files will still continue to work. Things like the font files, those are not changing currently at all. So if we use ones from the previous update, it'll be fine. There are a lot of... It really just depends on the game and what particular things are being updated in that update for that game. A good rule of thumb is to, if you do download a bundle mod, see how many bundles it replaces, how many bundle files it has. Each of those files should replace one in your target directory. So if it has, 30 bundle files, and you move it where it's supposed to go, and it says, replace 22 bundle files, ? What that means is that 22 of those bundle files have the same name and will probably work fine. Those other 8 bundle files, things have changed, and they will now not properly replace what they should. Again, it's not necessarily going to mess up your game, but it may mean that, for example, in a sprite mod, some of those sprites will change, some of them won't. So if you do something that was done specifically for this update, you'll be good, that everything should work. So as an example of something that has been recently updated and should work just fine, let's do the Dragon Quest styled UI icons mod by Sigdrasil Gaming. This also has the benefit of being something that we can very easily and quickly see is working. It should not take long to see whether our items have colored icons or not. So let's click on that mod. If you're not familiar with Nexus mods, I believe you do have to create a free account to download, but again, it's a free account. And then you can check out things like images, and it'll give you a sample image of, what your mod may look like. But if you click on the Files tab, it'll show you, the files for your mod. So you want to click on Manual Download. It reminds you that, hey, for this to work, you do need to have that updated unityplayer.dll. We've already done that. So click through to download, and then it will give you a slow download option and a fast download option. Slow download is if you are not a Nexus Premium member. If you are a Nexus Premium member, you can download faster. These are small files. It's not going to be a huge difference. For other kinds of mods, like, Skyrim, where you're downloading, 20 gigabyte mods, it may make a big difference. For something like this mod is 16 kilobytes. It makes no difference, really, for download speed there. So, we've downloaded our... it is going to be a bundle mod, because most UI, user interface mods, are going to be bundle mods. A lot of that stuff cannot be changed in Magicite. So, we've got our first mod. Let's get another bundle mod, but this one, the font mod. As it happens, we also have the SNES font mod, which replaces the modernized font of the 2 fonts in the game, with the font used for the Super Nintendo version of the game, the Chicago version of the Chicago font. So let's download that one. Again, slow download is fine. These files are pretty small. And now we want to end with a Magicite mod. Let's do the Ted Woolsey Uncensored Edition script. Or actually, maybe we can find one that's a little more obviously going to be working. Okay, I'm not seeing a ton of other Magicite mods. 6 has, I think, one of the more limited mod selections, just because it is much more complex to mod, because it's a more complex game. So I guess we'll do the Ted Woolsey Uncensored Edition script, which is a Magicite mod. What this does is it essentially takes the vanilla Pixel Remaster script of the game and changes it to something very much closer to the original Super Nintendo translation. A lot of people found that one a lot more kind of charming and full of character, even if it was less accurate to the original Japanese. And so this mod is there so that it does do some elements of kind of removing censorship, but it does generally keep that original translation, even if it's less accurate, because it did have a certain charm. We will choose to download this mod. It does, again, remind us that we do need to have Magicite installed to be able to use it, but we do. So click download again, and we'll download our third and final mod. Okay, so now we have 3 mods. Our 3 mods are... the Dragon Quest styled UI icons, the Chicago font, and the Ted Woolsey Uncensored Script Magicite mod. So, we'll start off with the font mod. So this one, as you can see, has that Final Fantasy VI data overarching directory. So for that one, we will want to just install it directly into that base directory, because that's where we saw that Final Fantasy VI data. That means it already has essentially all of the directory substructures needed for that to work. So let's click OK. And again, we know that this bundle mod is working because it asks us, do we want to replace it? So font N, do we want to replace that? Yes, we do. That's the English font file, which is going to be used for any English text. And then the font JA bundle, that's a Japanese font file, and it's what's going to be used for any numbers. So if we want to have the same font for both, we want to replace both of those. So that mod is now in-game, and when we start it up, it should have that font. But let's install our other two first. So we have Dragon Quest styled UI icons. Again, this has the same setup as far as kind of pre-planned. So we'll just put that main directory, and then it'll go straight into Final Fantasy VI data where it should be. Again, this has bundle mods, and it is going to replace each of them. And so we'll click yes. It has a single bundle that it replaces, which is the one with the icons. And so that is mod 2 down. And then our third mod, which is the Ted Woolsey Uncensored Magicite mod. This actually has two versions. One of these versions is a version to work with Text Box Framework, which is basically a mod that moves the speaker name from the special speaker boxes that Vanilla has into the text box itself, much like the original Super Nintendo version did. The reason to do this is A, you don't like the speaker boxes and want to get rid of them, or B, you want to repurpose those speaker boxes. There are quite a few mods out there that have character portraits, and the way that those character portraits work is that they are repurposing the speaker boxes to turn them into the portraits. And so as a result, you kind of need the name out of there because there is going to be no box for that name to go into. That said, we're not installing one of those mods right now, so we can just install the vanilla version. And again, it installs the same way. Final Fantasy VI data. So we just put in that main directory and call it good. Magicite mods are not necessarily going to ask you to replace anything because we're not replacing game files. So that is our three mods. There are other mods, other ways to set up. They don't always have you extract into that main directory. So sometimes it might, for example, give you the Magicite file, something like this. And then you would need to extract that into specifically the Magicite directory. Like that's how the Magicite mods that I've done have tended to go. Although this is actually much smoother, so I may actually, for the next releases, go to the same thing that these mods do. Okay, so we have our three mods now installed. Now all we have left is to start it up and see whether it works. So let's give it a go. And again, we have our console. You can turn the console bit off, but it's always much faster after that first time. So let's see. Come on. We'll know pretty quickly whether the font works. And it does indeed work. So instead of the kind of thinner pixel font that the vanilla game had, we now have that Chicago font from the Super Nintendo version. So we know that that at least is working. Let's see if we can test out our other two. So I have a save from early in the game with just Locke and Terra right before going to Figaro for the first time. So this should be a good way to be able to tell if the mod is actually the dialogue mod is working, and also the colored icons mod. So for colored icons, we can check items. And indeed, we do have colored icons. We have red potions, we have red tent, we have brown kind of items. So our colored items, colored icons mod is totally working. So that's 2 out of 3. That is a good start. So now let's walk up into Figaro, and let's see. do we have... the Woolsey translation will have Edgar telling Tara that basically he's dying to know. Something is the first reason, and then the second one is he's dying to know if he's her type, and then he says, I guess your abilities are a distant third. I think they do that slightly differently in the vanilla Pixel Remaster translation. So let's see. Let's go on up and talk to King Edgar and see what he says. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the Woolsey translation. Or the modded version of the uncensored Woolsey. Yes, here we go. Yes, the 3 reasons. First of all, your beauty has captivated me. Second, I'm dying to know if I'm your type. I guess your abilities would be a distant third. So that is, I'm pretty sure, the Woolsey translation. So all 3 of our mods are now working, which is what we want to see. So let's quit the game. So yes, this is pretty much going to be the process you use to install just about any mod. Currently, keep in mind that with bundle mods, some will be fully updated and will work perfectly. Others will not be updated, but will still work just fine. And others that are not updated may work partially or not at all. So just kind of have that caveat in mind. Once we're a little further out from the update, a lot more will have been updated, and so things will work a little better. But I wanted to get this video out because there's not a ton out there. All right, so to give you an idea of some of the other kinds of mods that are out there, if you look at that Steam guide, universal mod, let's see, universal mods, there's things that, can reduce walking stutter, Memoria, a bunch of Memoria mods are going to be crossed out because it's currently not updated. But things like Final Fantasy PR Fix, I don't think is listed up here yet. Some of these are a little out of date because they were done for the last update, but they haven't updated for this update yet. The different kinds of controller buttons and mod packs, different things for like the way battles work. There are obviously a ton of font mods, and there's a separate guide just for that. There are things that will let you use other soundtracks. So if you want to put in, the Synthetic Origin soundtrack mod, which uses the original samples that the SNES soundtracks samples were based on. If you want to have gameplay mods, so things like mods to make Shadow a more traditional ninja style, like Edge from Final Fantasy IV, or things to give you, different kinds of mods. Again, a bunch of these are Memoria mods that have not been updated. UI overhaul mods, again, some of these will work, some of these will not, because they're invariably going to be bundle mods. Different portrait mods for text box portraits or like in-game portraits, general user interface mods, there's the colored icons, ways to mod the title screen, ways to mod battle backgrounds, mod the kind of overworld tile sets and stuff like that, different sprites. Again, some of these will work just fine, some of these will not. Anything that's Magicite should work pretty well, though. So, yeah, that is kind of the introduction to Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster modding. We use 6 as an example here, but any of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters will go pretty much the exact same way. So if you're using 6 or not, any of the others should work just fine too. So again, This is a very quick and dirty guide. If you have any questions, you can leave comments on this video. I don't check those super often, so you may be better off going to the Moogles and Mods Discord, and that I'm usually on there pretty frequently. And I'll be happy to answer questions, so will other folks if I'm not available. And so definitely, for the most part, this should give you the tools that you need to be able to at least get some basic modding done. So yeah, that is the introduction to using mods for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster games. Hopefully you find it helpful. Happy modding and happy playing. And I guess that is it for me. So, Yossi signing off.